Today we're going to explore the Declaration of Independence. And our guiding question is, how did the colonies decide that they were free from Britain? At the start of 1776, many colonists were still neutral. Even after the Olive Branch Petition, some colonists really felt that they were torn about whether or not it was time to dissolve this relationship with Britain, or if they still had some strategies they could use to fix him. In January 1776, all of this changed. A 50-page pamphlet called Common Sense was published in Philadelphia. The author, named Thomas Paine, made fun of King George III and the idea of even being ruled by kings. The pamphlet said that the colonies would be better off if they governed themselves. Here's an image of that pamphlet. Back in the 1700s, pamphlets were a really common tool being used to spread information around quickly, kind of like a blog would be today. Here's an image of Thomas Paine, and this kind of summarizes his idea. He felt like, duh, it's common sense that we should rule ourselves. It's information that everyone should just know and understand. Why would we kind of let this silly guy and his crown all the way across the ocean from us rule us? So from those ideas, the Declaration of Independence would be born. The Continental Congress appointed a committee to draw up a statement stating the reasons for separation from Britain. Remember, the Continental Congress is this group that includes representatives from all different colonies. So this young lawyer, Thomas Jefferson, he was only 33 at the time, was given the task of composing or writing the Declaration. Other members suggested minor changes, but most of this document is Jefferson's work, and it was well known for the level of writing and the level of ideas, and one of the most famous pieces of writing in American history. Congress approved the Declaration on July 4th, 1776. Does anyone know why that day is important? Good, we celebrate that as Independence Day today. The signing took place on August 2nd and was risky for all of the delegates or representatives who signed. At this point, we're still under control of the British king, and if any of them were captured, they could have been killed. And here is a very famous painting of the signing of the Declaration, and there's John Hancock in the middle, who is the first signer and really took one of the biggest risks. The Declaration is split up in 4 sections. These are the preamble, the natural rights, the list of grievances, and dissolving the bonds. And here's an image of that document. Usually when you see that, you probably just see an old yellow scribbled up piece of paper, right? But if you look here, now you can notice this first section, which is the Declaration. This first section, which is the preamble, Then you have those protections of natural rights all here. The longest section, the grievances or the complaints against the king. And remember what we've been studying, they had a lot of reasons to complain. The final section is that declaring of independence. And then there are the signatures. And nice and large, you can see John Hancock's signature there. What is the purpose of the preamble? Here's a line. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another. This part lists the reasons the Declaration is being written and tells the British up front that the colonists will be declaring their freedom and ending this relationship. There's no, conditions here, right? The colonists aren't saying, if you do this and that, we'll be your colonists again. They're telling them right away, first section, this is over. What is the purpose of natural rights? This is probably the most famous section. I imagine that you've heard this line before. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These list rights that colonists believe all humans should have, but that they believe the British are restricting. The next list is the list of grievances. These all start off with, he has done this, and he has done that, and he has done this. Who do you think he is? If you guessed Justin Bieber, you're probably wrong, but if you guessed King George III, you're probably right. This list details the colonists' complaints against the British government and against King George III. All of those items we've learned about: taxes, limiting freedom, competition over resources, protest. There's evidence of all of those in the list of grievances. The last section is dissolving the bonds. What is the purpose of that? The goal is to state that the colonies are now free and independent. They're not wishy-washy about this. There's not like this condition of, if you do this, we'll get back together. If you do this, we'll get back together. The relationship is ended. And at this point, there is no going back. How did the Declaration affect African Americans, Native Americans, and women? Although the document ended the relationship between all colonists and Britain, the most famous part was not extended to these groups: life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. At this time, those groups were left out of that idea. African Americans were still enslaved. They didn't have any rights. Women were still considered to be the property of their husbands. Native Americans were not considered to have any claim to the land that they were living on. White males who owned property were the only members of society who had any political or economic power or any of those protections for natural rights described here. But you will get the opportunity to fix that in class.